I told you. I told you. But nobody listened. Nobody listened. And I told you it was going to happen.
And now we interrupt, disrupt, and crash this station.
The man fighting for peace, his legacy, truth in a sea of stupid.
Filtered for your sarcastic enjoyment, Ghost Getter.
First, I got to explain to you where this comes from. Okay? Some people are going to like it. Some people are not going to like it. Some people are going to say, I don't care about that. I was born and raised in a church where, and I'm going to say it's the Worldwide Church of God. And I was raised in it knowing that everything that they said is backed up or sources that come from the Bible. A lot of your churches won't do that. A lot of your religions won't do that. A lot of them will interpret it wrong or won't even use it. But I'm not going to get into that. This isn't a religious argument or anything like that, and I don't want it to be. This is not the purpose of this video. But anyway, so what I've learned from a long time ago is I'm not nowhere in the world going to take the credit for this. I'm not crazy. But what I learned a long time ago is, let me move this because my camera's kind of off center. There we go. It comes from God, who written it or wrote it in the Bible, put that in place in the Bible, or, you know. But he told Mr. Armstrong, was Herbert W. Armstrong, who told his ministers, who used it in sermons, telling us, the people who listen. Now, this is something that I've been involved in since I can remember. I was born in the church. I was raised in the church. I left when I was 16 years old, and but that's a long story. That's my problem. It eventually took me a while to come back, and a lot of people will say, well, Mr. Armstrong is this, and ministers are that, and they're sinners for this, and they're sinners for that, and they do this, and they do that. Who doesn't sin in this world? Every man is a sinner, including me. Every man has done something wrong and still does things wrong, including me. For you to sit there and criticize a human being when you know you're just as guilty is wrong. But I've never looked at the person personally, what they did behind closed doors. I looked at what they said and where those sources came from. This is what I based everything on, and which is what I'm telling you now. I base that solely on everything they have told me, coming straight from the Bible. I don't care who he is, what he did, and all that. You see YouTube videos all over the place where they run their mouth, criticize, and do all this stuff, and they're so selfish into calling everybody else names and calling everybody this and saying they're that, and the church is this and the church is that, but totally miss the point of why it was there. Totally will not tell you what was in this Bible, things that they said, what the message was, which is important. The important part is the message and what it meant and where it came from and what they were telling you, what God was telling you. This does not come from me. This comes from the Bible and what they said. And it came from him, it came from him, it came from God. It came from Christ. This is what was going on. Now, what they say, 1 or 2/3 of the Bible is prophecy? That is what I've told people for decades. Since I can remember going back to the 3rd grade and telling people, kids in school, look at what it says in here and blah, blah, blah. And, 3rd grade, they don't understand, but, they still laughed about it. Junior high, they laughed about it. High school, they laughed about it. People I know laughed about it. Told me I was wrong, said it was going to happen, and joked. I sat there and sat on the couch next to a girlfriend of mine and showed her scriptures, and I will show him here later, that describe tanks and helicopters in the Bible in the future and prophecy. Laughed at me for it. Totally ignored it. Even though I told her I had proof of this. Oh, show me the proof. I don't believe you. And I showed her. And she sat there and laughed about it. So I'm going to show you what I've been telling people for decades. And I'm seeing it now. What I've been telling people since the 3rd grade. What I've heard my entire life. And we're seeing it right now. So, who's laughing? Who's laughing now? Check out what's going on live TV and tell me who's laughing now, because I don't see anyone laughing anymore. I don't see anyone laughing. I'm seeing it unfolding as we speak. Everything over the last couple of years is unfolding as we speak. And I said this was going to happen. And like I said, I take no credit at all. Definitely not, because I'm not crazy. I don't take credit for nothing. I'm no psychic. This comes straight out of the Bible. I don't want to tell you everything because, you know, it makes for a long video. But over time, we will talk about this if you're interested. But let's give some points of what's going on now, what I've seen. And these stories and these things going on with Russia and whatnot. Now I'm hearing China's getting into it with Taiwan, and they're flying in their airspace and basically threatening them. But anyway, I thought was interesting is when this all started for decades, since I was, like I said, younger. I've told people about the two countries combining as one and then becoming the United States of Europe eventually, adding all the countries in, you know, together, becoming one country, and eventually becoming the United States of Europe. When the Berlin Wall fell, and it was mentioned in the press that the two countries would combine eventually, the threat is mainly Europe. The worry is the United States of Europe. When I watched that Berlin Wall fall and everybody was cheering and jumping up and down and, you know, going crazy, the first thing that popped in my head was, here we go. Prophecy is unfolding as we speak. That was the beginning of this whole thing. Of course, it's been planned, I'm sure, for a long time, but that was basically the beginning of it. And, of course, I've told people and things like that, and they just laughed it off because there is no such thing as the United States of Europe. You know, Russia became weaker, and China didn't seem like a threat. And by the way, speaking of Russia, what I do find interesting, and somebody criticized me for it once, going off the subject for a second, when I did a radio show and I had a chat room, I had this thing on my chat room where I can look and see by IP address what part of the world or country that listener was from when they came into my chat room. And I did this a lot, so the next week when I did a show, I can say, welcome France, or whatever part of the world they were in. I was welcoming the people that were in the chat room that were listening to my show. Now, I don't know where these people find my show because I wasn't very good at advertising it, especially the day of the show or the week of when the show came on. A lot of times I did research, hours of research for the last few days before my show. Any research I did had to back it up with audio, video, whatever the case is. But I did a lot of research. And I was talking about, I think it was a show on the occult and the satanic cult and witches and whatnot. I believe that's what I was doing a show on. And I seen a video a long time ago of a minister that used to be in the Worldwide Church of God. And he started his own, or he was a minister of another church, but basically he was talking about the scripture and where occult the occult and how powerful Satanism has become in Hollywood and things like that. So he was talking about Russia and how, if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember the guy's name because it was in Russian, but they were talking about a court case where these occult members were being banned for doing witchcraft, and Russia was banning them. Well, it turns out that they decided not to ban them because, one, they were worried about curses, and two, they were worried about lawsuits. Blah, blah, blah. This had to do with cult in Russia and Satanism. Well, at that time when I was talking about it and discussing it, somebody with a fake name or just a number popped into my chat room and was listening to what I was talking about the entire time. And they left. Now, I can't always keep track of the chat room. I check after the show or whatever. I had Kat do that, which has done a good job of it. But later on, I looked up the IP address and where this person that came in the chat room from, and I got down to within a mile of the Kremlin in Moscow was where the signal, the IP address was coming from. The Kremlin in Moscow. Now they talk about how Russia was always getting into cyber attacks and manipulating elections and this and that, and how Putin is a genius for cyber attacks and knows what he's doing. I found it really odd because, one, I didn't promote the show, so I don't know how they knew about it. Two, I don't know why they were in there. And three, it had to be right because it just so happened to be at the right time when I was talking about this story in Russia. Well, somebody criticized me and said, well, a lot of people get into chat rooms and use fake IP addresses, so it looks like they could be next door, and it's actually, they make it look like they're somewhere else. I said, well, that's fine, but don't you think it a little ironic that they just popped into my chat room right when I was talking about Russia and they were from the Kremlin or that area? It's a little too strange. Somebody had to have been really good at computers just to do that. But anyway, we're talking about strange and unusual things and how this is related to a lot of it. But they do say that, well, I don't want to get into that right now. I'll leave that one out. But let's get back to the United States of Europe and how I mentioned this in the 80s. And people said there's no such thing and it doesn't exist and all that. Eventually, this is going to be a thing with them and possibly Russia and possibly China. But that's for another story. That's not something I'm looking into yet. Let's look into this part. Let's get into this. This is what I'm talking about. This part right here. If I can get it to... Okay. If you can see it. The United States of Europe. This comes from January 23rd, 2022. How a little ironic this is. And we're looking at... since the formation of the new Germany, a new German government in November last year, an idea of the United States of Europe gained impetus. I guess that's what it says. It was the French writer Victor Hugo who articulated his vision of the United States of Europe 170 years ago. French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz are making history by transforming the 27-member European Union into the United States of Europe. don't forget I mentioned this before Germany and their countries combined, because they were still separated when I mentioned this. And prophecy unfolding. Victor Hugo states, a day will come when the only fields of battle will be the markets opening up to trade and the minds opening up to ideas. A day will come when bullets and bombs will be replaced by votes, by universal suffrage of people, since when do people actually listen to votes? By the venerable arbitration of a great sovereign senate. Yeah, when does that ever happen? Which will be the Europe of Parliament is to England, what this diet is to Germany, what the Legislative Assembly is to France. A day will come when we display cannon in museum, which as a display instruments of torture today. Amazed that such things could ever be possible. Will the United States of Europe be a myth, or can it be transformed into reality? In the last few hundred years, ideas of the United Europe for fragmented to a conflict-ridden continent remained an uphill task. Blah, blah, blah. You can go find this in Tribune.com. I will post this on the bottom of the screen when you, or at the bottom of the video if you want to read it yourself. I don't want to read the whole thing, but this just proves my point of what I was saying for a while, since the 80s. Yeah, there it is. So I'll post that later on if you want to read it. But what I find interesting, it says the end of the Cold War, the fall of the Berlin Wall, and the Soviet disintegration led to further expansion of the European economic community. It will ultimately lead to the signing of the Maastricht Treaty in 1993 and the launch of the European Union, the vision of the transformed Europe to free movement of the people. Goods, services, capital become possibility and a source of inspiration for other regions of the world. You know, I find it funny that they talk about a day of peace and all this being peace, and it'll be a time when, you know, wars and all that will be a thing of the past. They will be claiming peace, is what I find it very interesting. You know, it's really interesting on that is that also one of the prophecies in the Bible talk about the last days there will be claiming peace on earth. And that's also a prophecy. I find it also interesting that, where's this at? They talked about one world mark or financial system, one world religion. And I've mentioned all that for years. One world religion, one world financial system. I find it funny, not really funny, but recently a person that I have told this to when we were teenagers sent me a Facebook message and said, you remember when you were telling me about chaos breaking out into the streets and all this stuff going on? He told me I was right and everything else. And it's like, you're right. I said, no, this came from God. This did not come from me. I'm just telling you what they said. So, here we go. Here's another one. One World Religion headquarters set to open next year. I brought this up decades ago. Decades ago. In the 80s. And further than that. A One World Religion headquarters is set to open in 2022. The headquarters will be called the Aramaic Family House, which is built on the island in the middle of the eastern sea city of Abu Dhabi. The headquarters is being done in collaboration with Pope Francis, which is the one saying, I will not allow or I will not agree or collaborate with you in one United States of Europe or one world order unless it is Catholic based, unless there's one world religion. I find that interesting. And I saw an article on that, and out of nowhere, the article disappeared. And I can't find it anywhere. It just vanished. This is why I learned a long time ago, if you see something very interesting, you talk about it on the show, you copy and paste it, or you get the source fast and you take an image of the picture of the article, because it'll end up disappearing on you. Well, I was too slow to do it this time, and look what happened. The headquarters is being done in collaboration with Pope Francis and Sunni Muslim leader Sheikh Ahmed Al-Tayeb. I guess that's how it's pronounced. After they both signed a global peace covenant called the Document of Human Fraternity for World Peace. Like I said, Scripture, when they claim peace, that's when the end will come. We're also looking at a prophecy right now when they say in the Bible there will be wars and rumors of wars and the end time. And that's what we're dealing with now. The financial system in this country will collapse. That is happening right this minute. And people don't pay attention to that. What was it? The stock market was down 700 points this morning. It may have gone up a little bit more, but it's been down this morning. And I'm watching that, and, I kind of collect crypto just in case. Some people will, shun on me, crypto. But I just throw a few bucks in to see how it turns out. In case this goes to my retirement and I need retirement. But anyway, I was looking at that this morning, and everything was huge losses at cryptocurrency, huge losses in the stock market. Last time I checked, oil went up to $105 a barrel. I mean, when Trump was in office, it was $32. So now it's up to $105 a barrel. So because of this going on right now, we're going through this issue. The stated purpose of the Abrahamic family house is to bring understanding and tolerance among the faiths. But there are a couple of notable challenges. First, Abu Dhabi is part of the UAE, United States of World, United Emirates, and where it is illegal for Christians to proselytize, and conversion from Islam is prohibited. The Pope represents Roman Catholicism, where Christians are free to convert to Islam, but citizens of Abu Dhabi are not free to convert to choose Christ. Like Aramaic family, the promises tolerance and understanding. Constitution also disagrees freedom of religion. It also guarantees freedom of religion in accordance to established customs, but the devil is in the details. Those certain practices like conversion from Islam are directly prohibited. So this is why the Pope recently, where I saw a article and it vanished. It was a UK article about the United States of Europe and how they were trying to allow one world religion, which is brought on by the Pope and controlled by the Pope, which I guess they want everybody to be part of Catholicism, which I find very interesting. But I've told people years ago what I've been told, that one world religion will become the thing. One world mark, financial institution, one world country, that kind of dominance. And of course, people laughed it off. So, one religion headquarters. Is that a joke? Is that just coincidence? I don't think so. So anyway, it gets into details about other things. It's United Nations passed an anti-blasphemy law that most Christians are not aware of, that loosely translated law embraced by the UAE prohibits any teachings against Islam, including biblical teachings which could be considered offensive. Think I'm crazy? Think I'm crazy now? Now I want to show you two of the last things, which I've seen this for years. Since the 80s I've shown this. And it's describing what people say, describing tanks or helicopters in the Bible. Now, I get two different things on this, and I really haven't had a for sure answer, but it's pretty interesting stuff. It could be one of two things, so take it as it is, but it is an interesting scripture that I'm going to show you. Don't hit the wrong thing here. And it's the, this comes out of, you can look this up, you could find it anywhere where it says this. This is the sign of the helicopters, but some say it's God's army. Some say it's helicopters. I think it's interesting. And it was given to them that they should not kill them, but they should, I think that's, what is this? Revelation 9? But you can go through Revelation 1 through 7, I believe. And this is all in here. It was given to them that they should not kill them, but they should be tormented for 5 months, and their torment was of the torment of a scorpion when it striketh a man. And in these days men shall seek death, and they shall no wise find it, and they shall desire to die, and death fleeth from them. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared for war. If you look at that, and upon their heads were of crowns like unto gold. It could be angels striking at armies of bad or, evil. And their faces were faces of men, and they had hair and hair of women, and they were teeth and teeth of lions. Now, if you look at helicopters, it pretty much describes basically the same thing. And they had breastplates, and that were breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was the sound of chariots, and many horses rushing to war. Now, that's not that sound like helicopters to you? And their tails were tails like unto scorpions. If you see these kind of helicopters, I can't remember what they're called back in the day. And stings, and their tails were power to hurt men for 5 months. That was Revelation 9, 5 through 10. Cobras, that's what the helicopters were called. But I think 7 mentioned that some saying being of angels, but anyway, that's what I'm showing you. So let's look at the other one. This one's interesting also. And if you look at it just so happens that, when is this? This was done, I can't think of it. It don't give me a date. I know it's not new, but I think it's interesting that they're showing Russian tanks in this picture. These are the same tanks that were rolling into Ukraine today. So I don't think it was made today. It's just very odd. But it says, are tanks referenced in Bible prophecy? Tanks are described as chariots with flaming torches. Let me look it down, go straight down here. Revelation 9:16 through 19. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000, and I heard a number of them. And thus I saw the horses in a vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire, and of jacinth, and brimstone, and the heads were of horses, were as of heads of lions. And out of their mouths issued fire, smoke, and brimstone, just like tanks. And by these three were third of part of men. By these three was the third part of men killed by fire, by the fire and the smoke and the brimstone issued out of their mouths. Now, it could be a number of things, but I do find it interesting that when you look at the picture, it kind of coincides with what it's saying. So I think that's kind of interesting. But I've been saying this for years. Even in the 80s, I was talking about this and was laughed at because of it. because they couldn't see what I was seeing or understand what I was showing them. I guess I had to show them the pictures of tanks for them to get it, but I guess I was just way ahead of my time because, most teenagers are thinking about girls, cars, and drinking. I was more of looking into the future of our world right now and the way it's about to become. I was way ahead of that. And I'm trying to see, hold on. There's talking about in 18 when it said, by these three was the third part of men killed. Now, it does talk about in the Bible about 2/3, I believe, of the human population will be destroyed. And I think I was bringing that up in the 80s. I brought that up. 2/3 of the world. And isn't it interesting that we have all these elites, people that, who is it that runs Microsoft? Anyway, Bill Gates was mentioning it and his wife was mentioning it. So many elites were mentioning it. You can find the YouTube pages on this. You get into this New World Order stuff, and it's not about that. It's about God in the Bible and prophecy. And I think it's funny that they brought it up. That the only way to cleanse the earth is if we kill off 2/3 of the world and start over again, because they're using up all the food, they're using up all the resources, and blah, 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 which is bogus excuse. But I also find it interesting that I was hearing a story on the radio of author, revolutionist or whatever, in the late 1980s after the fall of the Soviet Union, brought up the fact that he was a type of revolutionist that believed that the only way to start over again and cleanse the world is if we have Armageddon and we have a great reset and just destroy everything and start all over again, kind of like Thanos. But it's interesting because Putin believes in this author and his philosophy, and is quoted as saying stuff about, said stuff about his beliefs and all that. But I don't know if he wants to follow his Armageddon policy, but I think it is interesting that he does want to start Russia over again as an empire, and he's tired of the riffraff. But I do find it really, really interesting, and I thought I would share it with you. Plus, I got other things that I've said over the years and years and years that people don't really wanted to believe, but I'm telling you now that it is happening, and we're seeing it unfold. And I'd like to keep talking about it, but, I got off here, and I haven't been on in a while because I was starting to think to myself, what's the point? But, there are a few out there that do follow and do listen and are going that route and do understand. Some are called conspiracy theorists and crazy people and stuff like that. But it's not a conspiracy if it's happening right now, and the proof is in the pudding. I just showed it to you. But this will change. We will go through hell on earth, so to speak, but eventually it will get better. There will be a setup. God's kingdom will be set up, and everything will change, and none of this will be. There will be no more pain, no more suffering, no more arguing, no more hatred, no more unforgiving people. None of this problems we have today that we have all your religions claiming they're going to fix and they haven't fixed. All these religions claiming that it'll only become better if we do this and do that. But there's violence in their religions as well. They haven't done anything. Man cannot rule themselves. That's what I was trying to say. And they haven't been able to do that for decades, and they're still not doing it. They don't follow God's law. They don't follow anything. None of us really do what we're supposed to do. I'm not going to go in there and say that I'm perfect, because I'm not. But things like this will not go on forever. We will have a better life and a better world in the future. And all that's in there, if you just read it and understand it and stop believing that we're all going to just be saved from all this. And things are going to change because none of them are preaching what they're supposed to be preaching. But anyway, let's not get into all that. But anyway, I'm going to get off here. I appreciate everybody watching, and I hope you understood where I'm coming from. But things are getting ugly, and they're going to unfold a little more uglier than usual. I suggest that we stop being argumentative, stop hating one another, stop with the road rage, stop with the fighting, stop with the bickering. It's all about acceptance, except I don't accept what you do. It's all about let's all become one, except that guy. We don't need him over here. That's a bunch of baloney. Acceptance isn't being acceptance the way it's supposed to be. Agreeing with people isn't agreeing with people if you don't like it. There are things I don't like about you, and there are things you don't like about me. We just have to learn to accept it. That's the way things have to be. Every character is different, and no two people are the same. So stop trying to be the same, because it isn't working. And there are people out there, let's all be the same, and my way or the highway. And that's just not going to work. We need to stop this mess because it's getting very ugly out there. And until we get band together and do something about it and start caring instead of hating, stop wishing people dead and start caring and think of your children and stop the hatred and teaching your children to hate and all this mess, it's never going to change. Nothing's ever going to change. Everybody claims that everybody's doing wrong, but the person complaining doesn't want to take responsibility for their actions and doing wrong. So that's just the way it is. But until we do that, it's going to be a long few years. The next few years are going to be really ugly. So anyway, appreciate everybody talking or coming over and watching this video. Until next time, see ya.